Hey. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
Meg, I know today is the last day of Q3, so
it is.
Thank you for spending some time with us here in front of our customers.
I'm making phone calls, in between events here.
Your staff is as well. I can see them busy on the phone and computers trying to close out the quarter, so thank you again for being here. Got some questions here for you, so I think we'll just jump right in. So you're just about 3 years into the transformation journey. How do you think it's been going so far?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. You are one of our biggest and best partners. We love doing business with Dasher, so it was a real honor to be invited, and I'm just thrilled to be here. So, listen, you're right. We've 3 years into what I laid out as a 5-year journey, and I'd say it's going pretty well. We're about where I thought we would be. And let me just give you a little context, because HP had been through a lot of change when I came to the company. I was the 3rd CEO in as many years, which is usually never a good thing for companies. And so I took stock of the situation in which we found ourselves. And I said, in order to set HP up for the next 75 years, we were going to have to rebuild and make sure we were setting up for the long term. And you can fix a quarter, you can fix a year, but I wanted to set this company up for the next 75 years. I think many of you know we will be 75 years old this year. And so I said, I think this will take 5 years to do it right. And it's a big company. Yeah. And so I said 5 years, and not because I meant 3. And we're right on track. The first year was about what did we want to tackle, what did we need to do better for our customers, for our employees, igniting the innovation engine. Now we are, I think you are starting to see the results of that improvement in innovation. That has to be our core value proposition. Pivoting back to the channel and small to medium-sized enterprise. The channel helped build HP, so we're really deeply focused on making sure that we're the best partner we know how to be. And then making sure that we're teaching, grooming, coaching, managing, helping our employees manage their careers at HP. So I feel very good. From a financial perspective, we're in good shape. When I came, we had $12.5 billion of debt on the HP operating company as distinct from HP Financial Services. Today we have about $2.7 billion net cash position on the operating company. So really made a lot of progress.
That's
so thank
fantastic.
You for asking.
No, that's great. So you mentioned innovation.
Yes.
I think when you stepped in, at least from the cheap seats, it felt like innovation had stagnated. And thank goodness that has changed.
Yeah.
Can you share with us some of the really cool things that are starting to happen and develop in HP Labs?
What was really interesting about innovation at HP? I have said before that, and I bet that's true for a lot of your companies, and it's very fortunate for HP, it turns out that it's hard to kill founder DNA. And the founding DNA of this company, despite the acquisitions, the change at the top, is really 3 things. It is a core commitment to engineering and innovation. It is about partnering and collaboration. And interesting is about giving back to the communities in which we operate. And so we decided let's double down on that. And when I went out to HP Labs and to our engineering teams, innovation was actually not dead at HP. It had just gone underground because the strategic direction of the company was switching so fast that the engineers weren't exactly sure what way we wanted to take the company. So they were just doing their work. And frankly, a lot of the innovation that you're seeing today had started before I got here. We just helped commercialize it, gave more funding, and accelerated the introduction. So I'll just give you some highlights. Our PC business, and I know many of you are customers of Dashers on the PC side of things, the commercial PC business is on fire because of the XP refresh and because the form factors now are so alluring to employees that you don't have to actually get the old thick bricks anymore. You can have a consumer-like experience with commercial-like products that give your companies serviceability, manageability, and security. And if you look at our thin and light notebooks, our detachables, our hybrids, which are all laptop, all tablet at the same time, to our super fast workstations, we have a whole new lineup of products, and we've gone after tablets for business. The consumer tablet market's a very tough market in my view. You probably all saw at Christmas. If there were probably 150 $59 consumer tablets on Walmart.com at Christmas. These are not business grade tablets, and so we decided we weren't really going to play in that space. We were going to really double down on tablets that businesses could use. So we're excited about that. On our printing business, this is one of the great businesses of HP, and I suspect for many of you. The big revolution here is taking ink into the office. So ink, as you know, historically was really more for your home office. And ink was cheaper, but not as fast as laser and not probably quite as good quality. We have developed a proprietary technology that actually delivers ink into the office at twice the speed of laser at half the cost per page at the same quality. So what you're seeing is small businesses, medium businesses are saying, hey, I can have a printing estate. And by the way, people still print. When I came to the company, they said, printing's dead, PC's dead, therefore you're dead. And they also said servers is dead. None of those three things turned out to be the case. So listen, people are still printing, particularly in the enterprise and business. And so this whole notion of being able to take ink into the office for small to medium-sized business all the way up is a great value proposition for customers. And so I'm excited about that. And then also we've introduced a line of multifunction color printers on the LaserJet side that are best in class. And we were out of that business for a bit. Not out, but we had been 7 years since we'd introduced a new lineup. And we've got 16 new multifunction printers, which are terrific. On the server side, you know, this is, as you all know, a history of HP back to compact days. And I spent Tuesday in Houston, Texas, where our server business is, going through the roadmap of the server lineup for 2015, 2016, and 2017. I've never seen anything like this. This was practically the most exciting day I have spent at HP. There is no better server engineering team on the planet. And in case you haven't noticed, some of our competitors are getting out of the server business. Yeah. So IBM is walking away, selling their business to Lenovo. Others are not investing in the R&D. They're going after the low end, but they're not investing in the core infrastructure. And my view is that's a mistake. Listen, I hear the same thing you do. It's all commodity. It's all going commodity. I actually completely beg to differ. You know, whether it's more efficient power, more efficient cooling, workload infrastructure that is designed to run specific workloads very competitively. There is so much that we can do here. And my view is that software without incredible infrastructure is actually not going to be that helpful. And so I think we've carved out a real exciting spot for us. Networking, we're thrilled to death with our networking business, gaining share versus Cisco. My view is that that market is ripe for change. Whether it's the convergence of wired and wireless LAN in the office spaces, whether it is people who are willing to understand that there's a better total cost of ownership at the same performance as the leading player in that business. We've got some terrific networking products. And then, of course, 3PAR has been on fire. And what you see in that market is the top end of storage is actually shrinking pretty dramatically in the last couple of quarters, but the mid-tier and the low end is exploding. And we've got a common architecture top to bottom. HP 3PAR mid-tier storage is as great a product as I've seen. So we're excited about this. And we've got our software business, Vertica. I know you're going to hear from Colin Mahoney a little later on. What Vertica does is incredible. I'm sure he will tell you the Facebook story where we won a bake-off between Teradata and Exadata. 9 months proof of concept. Because really what Facebook is a big data company. Their whole business model is predicated upon serving you ads that are relevant to you. So how they harness big data is central to their mission. And they picked us versus Exadata and versus Teradata. And they took the Exadata container for the appliance and made it into a whiskey bar after they picked us.
So few people realize that HP is the 6th largest software company in the world.
Yes.
Right? I don't think that gets advertised or talked about enough.
Yeah.
Right.
So I say only a $4 billion business.
Right.
Within Big HP, that's a relatively small business. But as you said, if it was a standalone software company, it would be the 6th largest software company in the world. And we've chosen to focus on 4 places. First is big data and analytics with Vertica and autonomy, anchored by our big data analytics platform called Haven. Haven stands for Hadoop, autonomy, Vertica, enterprise security products, and N is applications. So we're building a big data platform where you can put your data into Hadoop, big data lake, apply autonomy for unstructured data, Vertica for structured data, with a security wrapper that makes businesses feel secure. And then you can write applications to that platform, we'll write applications to that platform, our partners will write applications to that platform, and we think this is a big opportunity. And then our security products, ArcSight, Tipping Point, Fortify, Atala, all tremendous products in a space that is changing dramatically. Boy, security, I have to say, it's changing at lightning speed. When I was at eBay, we used to worry about a teenager in Red Deer, Montana, hacking into our site just for some fame. As you well know, this is organized crime. This is state-owned enterprises that are going after our intellectual property, our data, and guess what? They go where the money is. So this is China, this is Russia, this is Iran, and organized crime in those countries. And this is, in my view, one of the most challenging things of our generation of technologists, right, which is the bad guys get better, you get better, the bad guys get better, you get better. There's no steady state on security. It's an arms race. And now, obviously, a board level issue at every company. Once we saw the Target breach, the eBay breach, and it was very interesting several weeks ago, ISS, which is the advisory services that advise shareholders on how to vote on proxy matters, and whether they vote for the directors. ISS voted or said to their people they advise, you should vote against every single Target director because of that breach. So this is unprecedented. Frankly, I don't know how you actually hold your board of directors accountable for a breach, but it has made every board of directors, no matter how small the company is, stand up and take notice, and they want to know everything about the security infrastructure that they have as a company.
Right, okay. We've heard a lot of your staff talk about HP's new style of IT.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
So the new style of IT, in many ways, is a new style of business that is powered by IT. And let me just give you a little more explanation. Everything in business is changing, and we've all been in business for a long time, but boy, doesn't it seem like we are at one of those incredibly momentous times in our industry. The explosion of data, the security risk, the ability to do things much faster at lower cost with speed and agility that was certainly not possible even 5 to 10 years ago. And so my view is everything about the demands on business is changing. I mean, I see it just at HP. My lines of business executives, they want more out of IT. They want the applications faster. They want them secure. They want them mobile. And they want to know, how can we make sense of all this data?
Right.
Whether you are HP, an $110 billion company, or a $10 million company or a $1 million company, the pressures are exactly the same. And so everything about how IT is being bought, paid for, deployed, how applications are written, how your customers and your employees interact with technology is changing dramatically. There is a huge generational gap between what the 50 and 60-somethings want versus what the 20 to 30-something want. I see this in our own IT organization. The 20s and 30-somethings are not even beginning to think about putting up with what we put up with. They want a consumer GUI. They want it fast. They don't want to be tethered. They want to be mobile. And they absolutely are demanding a user interface that is modern. And so we call that the new style of IT. And our company strategy, if you have to say your company strategy in a word, we want to be solutions for this new style of IT. And it is really remarkable how much change there's been in the last couple of years. When I came to HP, you probably know my background tends to be more consumer space than the enterprise space. And this consumer space moves like this. When I came to HP, a lot of my colleagues said, don't worry, Meg, we're in the enterprise space primarily. You've got a lot of time to figure this out. Nothing much is going on here. Yeah, there's all this talk about cloud and big data, but we've got time. I mean, think about your world and how it has changed in the last 3 years. It's remarkable. So speed is absolutely essential. And so we're pivoting the entire company to solutions for the new style of IT.
So you've mentioned cloud a couple of times, and
Yeah.
at Discover in June, you mentioned HP Helion.
Yes.
Can you expand on that and tell the audience, those that weren't at Discover, a little bit about
Sure.
that?
So HP Helion is a portfolio of services and products that enable your journey or your customer's journey to the cloud. And let me explain our point of difference. So why are people interested in the cloud? They're interested in the cloud because it can reduce capital expenditures, it can increase data center utilization, it can make the deployment of applications much faster. So, but when most people say cloud today, their brain goes to a public cloud like an Amazon Web Services or an Azure or Google's public cloud. I believe that there will always be applications or test dev applications that you want to run in a public cloud. But I do not believe that that is going to be the only place that people run applications in the cloud, because this is multi-tenancy. Most of those companies come at this from a consumer perspective, not a business perspective. So we thought about what are the HP assets that we can bring to bear to deliver the benefits of cloud to customers, businesses of all sizes. And our first hypothesis, our first core principle is we think this is a hybrid world. That there are applications that you may want locked down in your data center on your hardware, untouched by human hands, except for your own. If you think about the big financial services institutions, that's going to be their trading applications and maybe some of their private wealth applications. Then there are applications that you may want to run in a private cloud. Then there are applications that you may want to run in a virtual private cloud run by us or somebody else, so that you get the ability to have flexible data center utilization. And then there may be some apps you want to run in a public cloud. But what you need is a common architecture so that you can move those applications from one deployment to another as your needs grow and change as a business. So our value proposition is hybrid cloud anchored by one management plane, one common architecture. And we are the only people that can do this because we have our private cloud, which I'm sure many of you have bought from us. We are the leader in private cloud. Our enterprise services enables us to provide the virtual private cloud, and then we built our own enterprise-grade public cloud, all linked together with a common management plane. And then here's the decision we had to make. Under what kind of architecture do you want to build this? And we made the choice to build on OpenStack. And this was a big decision, as you can imagine. But I believe that we had to build an architecture where the puck was going to be. If you chase the puck in the ice hockey analogy, by the time you get to where the puck is, it's moved. And my view is the world is going to an open source environment, and that we had to make a rather bold but futuristic look at what were we going to do here. So we are now the largest contributor to OpenStack. We have a services practice. We have the ability to help each of you with Dasher to figure out what is your journey to the cloud. How do you want to do it that is different from your competitor? And then, of course, we have what we call the HP Helion Network, which is folks who will help us do this, whether they be big service providers or partners. So we're excited about it, and it's gotten great reviews.
Right.
We have more interest than we've ever seen, and we're pretty excited about it. And it's completely unique to HP.
Right. We were an early adopter,
Yes.
and it has gone very well for some of our customers, and we're excited to talk about it with those that are in the audience as well.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, you're entirely welcome. And it's business grade.
Right.
You know, I love Amazon. Listen, I competed against them for 10 years at eBay, and they are a terrific company, and they've done remarkable things, but at their core, they are a consumer company. and they have no interest in being on a bridge call with you. They have no interest in break fix. They have no interest in troubleshooting. What they want you to do is buy a little storage, buy a little compute, stand it up in the afternoon, and they never want to hear from you again. And I think that is our opportunity, because that's not the way it actually works in business.
Right.
And so I think that's a real point of difference as well. And then the other thing that's true about AWS is, despite the price cuts, if you get to real scale with an AWS, it's actually more expensive. And very few people understand this. Everyone thinks that this is the cheapest thing that ever happened. Actually, at scale, it's not. So I think there's a real opportunity in the market.
Just a quick poll of the audience. How many of you are aware if you have folks in your organization that are subscribers to AWS? Okay. How many of you would be interested in having a conversation with HP along these lines? Okay.
There you go.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, Meg, forgive me. I'm going to read this next question.
Okay.
Reflecting back at your experience at eBay,
Yep.
as one of Silicon Valley's technology startups, original startups, and the fact that many members of the audience today would aspire to enjoy that kind of success, what advice would you share with the technology leaders in the room today?
That's a very good question. So I had the privilege of leading eBay at really the dawn of the internet, if you think about it. I joined eBay in 1998. The company was founded in 1995 over Labor Day weekend, where Pierre Omidyar, the then 25-year-old founder, wrote the code over a weekend, stood up eBay on Monday, and you just could see. And by the way, the way you used to get customers back in the day was post in Usenet groups. It seems like ancient history. So I had the privilege of joining him in the spring of, in January of 1998. And so we had the wind at our back. Okay, so if I were to give advice to the technology leaders, it's a good idea to be in a space where you have wind at your back. It's better to be lucky than smart. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is the fundamentals of business apply, whether it is eBay going from 4 million in revenue to 8 billion or HP at 110 billion. It is first and foremost about what is the value proposition that you are presenting to your customers. What makes you different? Why will customers love you versus someone else? The second is the right people in the right job at the right time. And this was incredibly important at eBay. It is incredibly important at HP. You all know you are only as good as the people that work with you. And at eBay, it was ridiculously challenging because we were growing at a 70% compound monthly growth rate. So just the ability to keep up and make sure you had the right people, because someone who was perfect when the company was 4 million in revenue, when it was 8 million in revenue was not so perfect anymore. When it was 40 million in revenue, they were not at all perfect. So I spent a lot of time in the early days of calving responsibilities, getting the right people in the right job. And we had spots for virtually everybody, but the responsibilities had to change. We had a phrase, reorganize early and often, which people hate. By the way, they hate it. And, but we had to do it, otherwise we were going to fall behind. And then I learned obviously a lot about technology and making sure that your infrastructure is architected correctly to handle the volume and the pace, which ours was not, by the way. Learned a lot about basically making sure that you figured out where in most businesses, there's only a few decisions that really matter. You make a lot of decisions, but at eBay, there was first and foremost was to focus on our core market of collectibles. When we took eBay public, 8% of the items on eBay were Beanie Babies. Wow. Not a fact we widely shared with investors. But there was a seminal decision, which is, do we focus on the core collectibles market, or do we go to consumer electronics, fashion, gardening supplies? And the argument was much bigger market sizes if we went to new categories. But the decision we made is your earliest users are your most loyal users. It is where you have carved out a niche already. So we doubled down on collectibles, which was quite a seminal decision. And what happened is we got network effects, which is where the buyers are, the sellers want to be, which is where the buyers want to be in the collectibles. And then that allowed us to branch out with our users to other categories. The other decision we made was when to go global. And we went global and we went fast. Because in a network effects business, you've got to get there fast. And then the second thing is we were very smart to buy PayPal. And PayPal obviously reduced friction from our marketplace. So there is just a few decisions. When I think about HP, the decision to invest in innovation, to go back to the core founding DNA of this company, was such the right decision. The focus on making sure that we knew where we were going to play and what our value proposition was. The core decision to double down on our hardware business. Yeah. Against all odds. I mean, I can't tell you the number of pieces of advice. Get out of the PC business. Printing is dead. You should get out of that business. Servers is going to be a commodity. You should get out of that business. And we actually didn't take any of that advice.
Right.
And now the competitive field is much less than it even was. We have an offering that is differentiated. So, you know, the story will not be told for a number of more years, but there's just a few decisions that make a real difference in any business. And I try to figure out what those are and make those decisions correctly.
That's awesome. Which of your competitors in the enterprise space do you take most seriously?
Yeah. So I take our competitors all seriously. I think Andy Grove taught us a lot, which is only the paranoid survive. And so I am a hawk on what our competitors are doing. And you have to be careful because the more you know, the more you have a tendency, at least I do, is to react to everything that you read that your competitors are doing. What I've learned over many years is you have to play your own game of golf. You have to know what your competitors are doing, but you can't constantly be in reaction mode because if you are, you will be falling behind. Yeah. So we're very focused on our competition. Listen, Cisco is a very big, very powerful, well-run company in Silicon Valley, and they have a very big price umbrella in the networking business that they're using to fund other businesses. However, I would say that they have tremendous vulnerability in their core market, and we aim to take advantage of that. EMC, very strong in storage. Again, they don't have the architectural simplicity and the ability to go from the top to the bottom in terms of storage that we do. We're gaining share in that business. They also have significant margins that we want to go after. I always worry about IBM. A lot of my colleagues in the Valley say, IBM, I don't think so. Listen, you never count IBM out. They are an incredibly large, well-run company. I think Ginny Rometty is doing a good job trying to reboot IBM. But we now are all about going after that IBM share of servers. Because in this transition from IBM to Lenovo, what's the roadmap going to be like? I will tell you, servers are different than PCs. They're going to find out that servers are different than PCs. So we're really focused on that, making sure we take our server share now while they're in that very awkward, uncertain time in that transition. And then, you know, on the enterprise side, listen, you know, on the device side, on the print side, lots of different competitors. But I also keep an eye on Silicon Valley startups because this is where, listen, I was the leader of a company that disrupted the oldest industry in the world, which was retail. And at any given time, there is a startup, you know, 90 miles down the road that is trying to eat our lunch.
Right.
And so we have a scanning team that does nothing but look at who's getting funded, who the startups are, where the entrepreneurs who have a track record or what they're doing next, and then trying to figure out, you know, should we partner now because of our balance sheet, we can be in the acquisition business. What do we have to do, or what should we do from an organic R&D perspective that keeps us ahead of the game? So it's one of the great things about technology. You know, if you miss one cycle, you can catch the other one. And there's always someone new who's trying to kill you.
Great. Fun, fun, fun. People in our industry have said that you have the hardest job in Silicon Valley. I also have heard anecdotally that you're on the road 300 days a year. How do you do it?
Well, I think when I took over from HP, I would say it was a very significant challenge. The company had been through a lot, and so it was a very significant challenge. What I will say is there what I discovered is there were lots of challenges, but there were also lots of strengths to build on. I mean, a startup would kill to spend $3 billion a year on R&D. I was with our software business yesterday. I was with the ITOM group, our IT operations management suite of products. And the amount of R&D that we spend relative to startups that are trying to disrupt us is a gift. Yeah. I mean, at eBay, I would have killed to have like $200 million of R&D. So you've got to go find the things that differentiate you. And scale differentiates us, right? Our ability to operate globally, our partner network is a huge advantage of ours. So we had to double down on the strengths. But it was a lot of work because there was a crisis of confidence in our customers. I think there was a crisis of confidence in our employees. And so it was a lot of work. I will tell you, one of the things that stood me in good stead, and you will be surprised by this, was running for governor of California. And you might say, what in the world has running for governor of California got to do with running HP? Couple things. One is, it gave me a tremendously thick skin. I will say nothing bothers me. It was very funny when I was named the head of HP. The press, as you recall, was not terrific. You know, she's a consumer gal. She doesn't know the enterprise space. Like, what's up with this? And so the board felt very badly. And we had a board meeting right after I was named, and they said, "Oh gosh, we feel so bad about this press. You know, I hope it does. You know, I hope you're okay." I'm reading the press, going, "This is the best press I have had in 2.5 years. This is the greatest thing ever." And as all kinds of challenges came up, the hardest thing I will ever do from a professional perspective was running for governor. And so this seems relatively manageable. And by the way, I know how to do this, which is actually helpful as well. I think, you know, sometimes you just, your background, your experiences prepare you for what you're asked to do. And the combination of being a Silicon Valley native, understanding speed and disruption, having run for governor, having bought a lot of hardware, just happened to be an alchemy that thus far has proven to be pretty good. But it's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work. I don't know if I'm on the road 300 days, but probably 250. So, you know, you just pace yourself. You have great people that work with you, and you know that it's going to be really hard. And you just kind of get down there and do what you need to do. Put your head down, get the job done.
Globally, what region provides the biggest challenge right now for you?
So I would
What's
say
the battleground?
The global economy here is very challenging.
Yeah.
And it's not linear. So Europe went through a very tough time. And Europe, for us, you'll feel pretty good about Europe. And then there'll be some, you know, people seceding from the EU, getting off the, you know, currency, and then it'll do this. And then there'll be a crisis in Greece, or a crisis in the Ukraine, a crisis in Russia. And the economy is now so interlinked that you've got a problem in the Ukraine and Russia, and the contagion is spreading back across Europe. Because guess where 80% of Europeans' energy resources come from? Russia. So as Putin is doing whatever he's doing, there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's a challenge. It's a great region. We have a great market share there, but it's a challenge because it's uneven. It's hard to plan. The United States, actually, I would be interested to know what you think. The United States feels like it's finally picking up. I mean, small, but it feels like it's picking up and it's sustained. And so I'm quite bullish. I was in Birmingham, Alabama on Friday. I was in Atlanta on Monday. I was in Houston on Tuesday. And boy, it just feels better. Small business feels better. People are spending again. There's a bit more consumer confidence. It just feels better. And our business feels better. So I'm feeling optimistic about the United States. And Asia, I'm not sure we should actually we call APJ, Asia Pacific, Japan, a region. I'm not sure we should, because Korea is completely different than Japan, which is completely different than China, which is completely different than Australia and New Zealand, which is completely different than Indonesia. You almost have to look at each of the different markets and say, how are we going to compete in these markets? But it's high growth. Emerging countries are building the infrastructure that we once built here and are maybe starting to refresh. So we always have to keep our eye on these emerging countries. But our top 15 countries, out of the 166 in which we do business, 15 countries account for 80% of our revenues. So while we are interested in the African continent, it will take Nigeria a long time, to be the size effectively of the business that we do in Florida. So you always have to have that perspective when you get romanced by high growth rates.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are all the questions that I had. So Meg, if you're open, I was going to open it up to the audience.
Listen, ask me any question. I often say, remember, I did run for public office, so nothing hurts my feelings.
Well, perfect. You've mentioned the press and the criticisms that have been levied against you and the bad advice that you've been given. Do you still read editorials? And if so, how do you separate good advice from bad advice?
Yeah. So, listen, I actually don't read a lot of press about HP and about my leadership because it's actually not helpful. I learned that on the campaign trail. So my team tells me if there's something I must see about HP. And then my view is we have to keep our own counsel. We're a group of very seasoned executives. We understand the competition. I think we understand the trends in the marketplace deeply. And then what we have to do is marry our competitive strengths with what the competition is doing, with what the trends are going to demand, what you all are going to demand from us as an IT provider. And I really believe we have to play our own game of golf. As I said, we've got to get the strategy that we think will be successful in the marketplace, and then constantly get feedback from all of you. If we're not meeting your needs, if we've missed a trend in the marketplace, if we've missed a price point, then we've got to have 2 ears and 1 mouth and really listen hard to what you're saying. So I listen to the pundits. I mean, I sort of, I'm in the flow of Verge and TechCrunch and, all the pundits and the advisors. But mostly we try to keep our own counsel.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm good. My name is you touched on a couple of things, consumerization of IT. You mentioned IBM. What do you think of the Apple, announcement recently? I look around, most people have their iPhones or iPads.
Yeah.
On the enterprise.
So the objective of, I think, that partnership is to improve iPhone penetration into business, but perhaps more importantly, iPad penetration into business. My view is that this is going to be an awkward marriage. Maybe it'll be the greatest thing ever, but this is a company that's getting out of the hardware and the device business. And all of a sudden, they've got to go to a go-to-market partnership that is not their own engineering. It's a distribution agreement, effectively, where they're theoretically going to write some apps for the enterprise on the iPad. So listen, it'll be very interesting to see what I know, and those of you who run sales forces know, sales forces can do only a small number of things. And whether they can retrain a services and software sales force to sell devices and the attenuated applications, we will see. We actually took a look at this deal. The economics of this are not what we need it to be. And I also think we have to be able to be a multi-OS company. Windows, Android, the growth is in Android. And as we look across the landscape, if we are not in the Android business, I think collectively we're not going to be able to, Dasher and HP are not going to be able to serve your needs. And if you make that bet, trust me, you're not in the Android business. So that was another consideration for us. Where's the market going? Where's the share gain happening globally? It's happening in Android. And why is that important? It's the app ecosystem. Because the app developers want to develop for the biggest ecosystem. The biggest ecosystem and the fastest growing ecosystem is Android. So my view is, from a device perspective, we've got to be in Android. Just like on the chipset, we've got to embrace ARM, both on the device, the PC business, and we've got to ultimately position ARM in the server market. That's Moonshot. Moonshot's built on an Intel server, but it's also built on an ARM server, which we launched this fall. That is central to us, because what does ARM bring? ARM brings low power, very efficient, space, and that is the future. So that's my view. You could be the MC.
A lot of hands. Right here.
Hi. Sorry. Thanks. I'm Brad Tompkins with Red Hat. So first of all, very happy to see your support for OpenStack and Open Hybrid Cloud. We're happy to join you where the puck is. Thank you. But my question is actually a little bit different. So I heard you mention autonomy a little bit earlier, and of course it raises the question of the $8.8 billion write-down. Now, obviously that acquisition, I think, took place before you came on board. My question to you from a business perspective is, what advice would you today give your predecessors upon making that acquisition?
Yeah. So I'm historically not a fan of huge acquisitions. This was a big acquisition. This was a $12 billion acquisition. And so my experience at eBay and other companies I've worked for is that tuck-in acquisitions, maybe even as big as $2 or $3 or $4 billion you can go up to. But if you're making a singular bet to transform your company, I think the history books would tell you it doesn't usually work. And so that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I would say is, and listen, 2020, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, right? Listen, I totally understand the trend to big data. I totally understand the margins in software, but 70% of HP's business is in hardware. So the notion that we're going to transform a fundamental infrastructure company, device company, to a software company based on the basis of one acquisition was probably not what was actually realistic. So I think what I would say is, listen, we had to capitalize on the big data trends. We are thrilled to death with Vertica, which you're going to hear from later. The idle engine, which is the engine that actually processes the unstructured data within autonomy that makes sense of tweets, videos, blog, audio, is actually magic. So I'm very glad we have this technology. Obviously, with 2020 hindsight, we paid too much for it. Probably, even in the absence of strategic misrepresentation of the financials, we probably paid too much for it. So, my view is, as we now get back into the acquisition game, what do we need to buy that furthers cloud, big data, security, mobility? But how do we make sure that we're tucking those in that allows our organic suite to be stronger as opposed to sort of a transformational acquisition?
Thank you.
We had a question right here, Justin.
Question about business continuity. We heard Tom in the panel talk about the process he went through at Riverbed to get business continuity systems up.
Yeah.
It seems an area that's ripe for simplification. And I wonder, what is HP doing in that area?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things here. First and foremost is, what is the architecture that you're driving in the data center to create redundancy, resiliency, disaster recovery? And how do you want to, from my experience at eBay and my experience at HP, is as a business, you have to have a vision of what your business continuity strategy looks like. And it starts with the architecture of how you have architected your applications, how you've architected your data center, and where you want to have your backup and recovery systems. And by the way, it takes investment. This does not happen for free, as many of our customers are now understanding. So I think you have to take a very strategic perspective. And then you have to decide where the real risk is in your infrastructure and your apps. Because my view is you can't protect everything. You've got to say, where is the real challenges, and then what is the cost-effective way to make this work? And so my view is you've got to partner with someone who understands this space and start with, what are you trying to protect? What are you trying to have your business continuity deliver? What apps need to be up instantaneously? What apps could be up in 12 hours? And it doesn't completely destroy your business. Listen, if you're in the medical records field today, you cannot be down at any point of the time or day, because doctors are basically writing their notes, doing their work online, and they need to do it right now. Listen, our HP.com cannot be down anytime, any place, because 10 o'clock in the morning in Germany is late evening when people are buying in China. So I think it's a separation of application systems to figure out what's the right path, and then you've got to partner with a vendor, with a partner, to figure out how you get there from here.
Oh, question back there, and then.
Hi, Meg. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Sorry. Charlie Muller, a longtime HP customer. First of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I think it's leaders talking to leaders is great. It seems like a casual conversation about we pick up a lot. You speak a lot about vision, and so my question is actually two questions. One, going back, looking at your transition and role and stepping into HP, what was the biggest challenge to transforming, getting alignment, getting people on board? I won't say your vision, because I don't think vision is something you own, it's something we share. The other question, you can choose either one to answer, is what do you see your role, what do you see, not your role, but what do you see the role of business social or social business, however you want to put it, in the landscape of IT going forward?
Sure. So I think every situation in which you come into has its own characteristics, and you've really got to understand the situation quite deeply. And what I immediately understood is that I had to enlist hearts and minds of HP people, because it was a group that had been through a lot. I mean, I can sit back and laugh now. Of course, on my first day, I did an all-employee webcast. Hey, Meg Whitman here, you know. And there was probably 300 people in the room, but then we were broadcasting across the globe. And the body language in the room was like, okay, here we go again. And who is this consumer chick? I mean, you could just see it. And so we surveyed to death at HP. Every big group meeting we do, everyone surveys. And the number one comment was, she seems nice, ... So I had to win the confidence as fast as humanly possible with HP people, because those are the folks who show up with you every day. And so it became, the way we did it was, okay, we're going to say we're going to do something, and then we're going to actually do it. Like, you know, mean what you say what you mean, and deliver. The other thing I learned from politics is there is symbolic value to leadership. So you might recall Jerry Brown. When I ran against Jerry Brown, there was an enormous budget deficit in California. There still is an enormous budget deficit in California, but we're not going to go there right now. So one of the first things he did was he said, we're going to take cell phones away from those civil servants. We're going to take half the cell phones away from the civil servants. That's how we're going to save cost and get the budget back in line. Okay, first of all, I'm not sure we should have unplugged the cell phones as opposed to the landlines, but that expenditure was 0.001% of the state of California budget. But what he was doing was symbolic. He was saying, I'm going to make change that everyone can see so you know where I'm headed. And you talk to man on the street after he did that, they were like, Jerry Brown is on it. He is taking, you know, we're taking the cell phones away from those civil servants. We're getting, you know, out of waste and in the government. I actually followed that quite carefully. So when I came to HP, I was looking for what is symbolic value that can actually set the tenor. One of my predecessors was very security conscious. We had an executive parking lot with barbed wire and then the rolled barbed wire on the executive parking lot. He had blacked out an entire side of one of the buildings with blackout glass so that you couldn't see into the executive parking lot. And we came up through a separate entrance into huge wood-paneled offices. I immediately tore down that executive parking lot. Immediately, day 3. Tore down the executive parking lot, got rid of the black glass. That took a couple of weeks because we had to put new glass in. And started walking in the front door with everyone else. That went through HP like this. Then, the next thing I did was I moved all of us out of our wood-paneled offices into cubicles. The same size as everyone's cubicles around the globe. That went through HP immediately. And it just set a tone. I didn't have to say one word about it. It just happened. And so in the beginning, I was mean what I say what I mean, but what are the symbolic values? What are the symbolic things I can do to change the culture immediately at HP? So, and then on your question about, and then there's 100 other things we've done. Communication, you know, say what you're going to do, then show people that you actually did it. It also helps if the financial performance improves. And to be fair, it also helps if the stock price improves. Because that is actually the outside world's view of how we're doing. And when I came, the stock price was, I don't know, $23 or $24, went to $11.62, which was not a happy day. And now it's at, I don't know, 34 or 35. So that's actually part of the narrative that is actually, you know, helping, I think, customers have confidence, employees have confidence, and then you have that delightful positive cycle. And then social and business is absolutely, if you're talking about Facebook and Twitter and all the social media, absolutely critical. Because the buying decisions at many of our customers, and I'm sure Dasher will tell you this, the buying decisions are made very differently now than they were even 5 years ago. If people are looking for converged systems, or they're looking for new storage, or they're thinking about doing a PC refresh, that research starts on the net before a salesman from Dasher or from HP ever show up. And so if you're not in that information flow where the folks are getting their decisions, you may never be invited to the party. So the whole marketing change, we have a huge marketing change underway to make sure that we understand and are taking advantage of the new buying patterns.
Thank you.
Got a question in the front.
You mentioned about the organized often and regularly, and the person at 4 million may not be the right person at 8 million. How do you, what's the internal questions and flags that you do to say, I need to do that now before the metrics get in the face?
Yeah. So it's different at HP than it was at a incredibly rapidly growing company. I adopted a model at eBay, which I had to hire ahead of the curve. So all of us have an instinct that we're hiring for today. We're hiring for someone who can do a great job as we see the landscape today. My problem was at eBay was that person, like the company was completely different 3 months later. So what we tried to do was, okay, could we hire someone to whom the company could grow? So if the company was here and I hired someone with the capabilities here, the company could catch up to them. And the first place I did this was our head of marketing at eBay was literally the head of marketing at Pepsi. I mean, for the first couple of months, he was walking around going, oh, what have I done? I mean, this is like a disaster. But pretty soon, it was really complicated. Legal. I hired, my head of legal was the head of M&A at Cooley Godward and the head of the SEC practice at Cooley Godward. He's walking around for the first couple of months saying, what am I doing here? But what we were doing at eBay is we were breaking new snow. We were creating new categories. And there was often not a legal body of law to inform us. We had to help create that body of law. And by the way, when you're disrupting, when you're breaking new snow, the entrenched competitors who do business the old way, they come out of the woodwork. They use politics, they use all kinds of things. So that was 2 examples. And then we did some of this in our, when we couldn't scale our infrastructure. We hired way ahead of the curve with Maynard Webb. So that's how I think about it. And that was actually after quite a bit of, shall we say, trial and error.
Over here, please.
Yeah, question is about the public cloud that you mentioned, AWS. Do you sell to HP gears to public cloud?
So we do. We sell HP gear to Azure. Listen, we will sell infrastructure to support these public clouds. We actually sell gear to service providers, like the big telcos. So we're quite confident, quite comfortable with this notion of coopetition. Sometimes we compete, sometimes we cooperate. Listen, Microsoft, we are one of Microsoft's largest customers. We have huge go-to-market with Microsoft. They're an incredibly important, we're designing infrastructure for Microsoft workloads in the enterprise. We're obviously the biggest buyer of Windows, and they're doing Surface, right? So you just kind of have to be able to hold 2 thoughts in your head, and you cannot get emotional about this. You basically just have to say, listen, we've got a business plan, we know what we're good at, we're going to continue to do that, and we will run into Surface from time to time, and then our objective is to beat them. So I think this is very much the new world order. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
it's a coopetition new world order, and you cannot let your organization get emotional about this. I also have a philosophy that we're going to need better even collaboration and cooperation in the next 5 years than we've had in the last 5 years. No company is going to be an island here. Things are changing so fast that my view is we need all the friends we can get. And how do we make sure that we've got the right partnerships? How do we make sure we're helping our partners be successful? And if there's competition from time to time, you know what, we'll sort of be grown-ups about it. But I think as you see these big tectonic plate shifts, and our industry does this every 10 to 15 years, this is not new. I would say the change we are about to undergo today is as meaningful and as seminal as that change from mainframe to client server. I think that is the magnitude of the change we're about to see here. When that happens, profit pools move, new competitors emerge, and you've got to make sure you've got the right partnerships as these big tectonic plate shifts happen. Because the dust here won't settle. The plates will not settle down, in my view, for probably another 3 to 5 years. And then we'll see who made it, sort of, if you will, to this new style of IT and who didn't. And there will be people who don't. I'm certain of it.
Hi, I'm Larry Lancaster. I've been a big fan of Vertica and now HP because I've been reading some articles about a big bet you're taking or placing on memristor technology.
Yes.
And I think that's exactly what you should do. I'm way behind you on that. I'm really curious, what do you think the data center looks like 5 years from now?
Yeah.
I mean, where does that take us?
Well, so I would say what's even more interesting is what the data center looks like 10 years from now. So let me tell you a little bit about our investment in what we call the machine. This is what HP Labs should do. This is who HP is. If you think about compute, it hasn't changed very much in the last 40 years, right? It is data that moves between the memory and the CPU and back again. And it's relatively slow, and it is a big power and space draw. What's happening, of course, is data is exploding. Estimates are between 2010 and 2020, the average amount of data that is developed every single day, generated every single day, will be 50x what it is today. So I think we all understand that the way compute's been done for the last 40 years probably isn't going to take us to the next place. There are very few companies with the kind of upstream resources and R&D capability left in these big tech companies, and we are one of them. And actually, we've increased the funding and focused the funding on HP Labs. So HP Labs, actually fully 50% of HP's budget is going to the machine. And basically the thesis is here that copper is hot and slow, and so data will travel over photonics through light, and that memory will be very different than it is today. And that it will go from being a processor-centric world to actually a memory-centric world. And so we announced memristor at Discover just in June. And this is not a product that is going to ship tomorrow. There are elements of the machine that are actually being embedded into our servers today. And then we believe in the sort of 2019, 2020 time, we may have a complete new way of compute. We are also doing something that is very big, hairy, and audacious. This will require a new operating system. And a lot of the commentary was, there's no way that's ever going to happen. But that's who we are. That is the DNA of this company. So we're trying to make sure that we do the evolutionary innovation really well, but the core DNA of this company is disruption and fundamental change. We invented the x86 server. We invented blades. We invented Moonshot. We have to invent the next thing that is totally disruptive. And my view is there are people who do evolutionary innovation really well, and it's incredibly important. But there are very few people who actually can see the future, who see around corners, who can envision something that everyone else says, no way is that ever going to work. And the more people who say that, no way that's ever going to work, you're probably onto something. So that's what we're trying to do. We can't do it everywhere, but we do think this is a really important bet for the company. And it's been really fun to watch what this has done for our customers and our partners and our employees. I've gotten so many emails that said, even if you fail, we're really glad you're doing this, because this is what leaders need to do. So we're pretty excited about it, and we're going to learn a lot along the way here. I'm sure there are things that, as we envision them today, won't quite work, and then we'll test and iterate, and we'll test and iterate, and we'll do what core R&D teams do. So we're excited about it, and thank you for asking.
Last couple questions.
There's one over there.
Oh, please.
To satisfy my own curiosity, what's your temperature, or rather HP's temperature, to get back into mobile or kind of grow mobile?
Yeah.
Or is it
Yeah.
more the path of taking the hybrid PC?
Yeah.
That's the...
So My view, and I've said this before, is that personal devices and commercial devices are a spectrum of compute, right? You know, it's actually from, you know, the server to the workstation to the desktop to laptop to hybrids to tablets, ultimately to smartphones, which is maybe the only compute device that many people will ever have. So we are spanning the gamut right up to the smartphone area. And as I said, tablets, we're much more interested in commercial tablets because there is, as I said, serviceability, manageability, security, and customization by industry for these tablets. Smartphones is more problematic. So there's one company that makes a lot of money in smartphones, and their name is Apple. You saw Samsung's earnings release yesterday, where their profitability in the phone business is down significantly. So we are doing some smartphones. We're doing them in India, Indonesia. They're more phablets than smartphones per se. They are voice activated, so there's a point of difference. But my view is we've got to own the spectrum of compute right up to the smartphone area. We may play in that smartphone area, but probably not in a broad-based way. Because remember, we talked about one of the things you have to do is you've got to decide where to play and how you're going to win. It is to make a huge dent in that market is the kind of investment that I think we have potentially higher and better use for, except for in some developing countries. So that's where we are. So we want to help, we want to be part of the ownership of that whole spectrum of compute. Listen, our workstations are best in class. Desktops are not dead. Laptops, notebooks, you know, this hybrid, as I said, tablets, I think is a very interesting area. So that's the choices that we've made thus far, and I think it's actually the right thing. So.
Yes.
Thank you for spending your time here today. And
Yeah.
thank you as well for embracing HP's founding DNA.
Yeah.
As a Silicon Valley person, having grown up here as well, I can completely appreciate it. I'm curious to know, on the technology and disruption side, where you're making outside investments in disruptive technology.
When you say outside, you mean acquisitions?
Acquisitions, but outside investments as opposed to internal to your R&D.
I see. Okay, so for example, like our investment in Hortonworks that we announced last week. Yeah. So the good news about us is we are now back in a real capital allocation decision-making framework. Really, the capital allocation for much of the last 3 years was pay the dividend, buy back shares to offset dilution, and pay down debt on the operating company. So the happy news is we have operating cash flow of roughly $8 to $9 billion a year, and we have $2.7 billion of net cash on the balance sheet. So now we can be in the investment and the acquisition area. They will largely, as I said, be more tuck-in investments and acquisitions, and in the area of cloud, big data, security, mobility, and then some of our core enterprise group areas, security, networking, servers, storage. In printing, we may make some acquisitions upstream, but boy, the organic innovation engine in printing is enormous. Our organic innovation in our PC business is actually right where it needs to be, in my view. We may make some software acquisitions in the areas of security and big data. We'll see. And then Hortonworks, listen, we obviously really understand the importance of Hadoop. We understand we've got a great relationship with Hortonworks, and that's obviously going to be part of our Haven platform and other things. So that's how we think about it. And we haven't done much because we haven't been in a position to. Now we are.
Last question. Scott.
Question, I think big data, cloud, security, the things that you've mentioned as core initiatives, they're very strategically intertwined.
Yes.
And could you speak a little bit about what you think HP's perspective and
Sure.
future direction is?
Yeah, they are intertwined. My view is the biggest application in the cloud may be big data. And so they're intertwined, and we think about it that way. We also think that there is a sort of an increasingly blurred line between the software-defined data center and cloud. So this is part of really understanding the trends and where we're going to play, and then how we're going to manage those trends, because customers are on incredibly different journeys here. And so how we segment the market with our partners to offer what each of you need in your journey to either the software-defined data center or ultimately to the cloud. What applications do you want to run in the cloud? And therefore, what's the underlying infrastructure that has to support those applications in the cloud? And one of the things that we see, which is, I think, I don't know, I'm relatively new to the enterprise side of this, but what I see going on in the infrastructure side is in the old days, when I started in my career in technology, the app typically had to comport to the hardware. We spent a lot of time making the application at eBay run on Big Sun Starfires, which if I had to do that over again, it would be different. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Today, actually, the hardware is having to comport to the app. And what we're seeing is that, particularly in scale-out computing, if you've got a big app that's running on singularly, then you want hardware that is actually tuned, designed, and everything is taken out of that hardware that's not necessary to run that particular app. So this notion of marrying the infrastructure to the app, I think, is a huge opportunity for us, Dasher, collectively, because what I'm seeing from small to medium-sized to big businesses is what app are you trying to optimize, and how do you have your CapEx, your OpEx, the ability to run those workloads at far better efficiencies and utilization. So you're right, there's a lot of moving vectors here. I would anchor it around, I think the biggest application in the cloud may well be big data, and I think that this workload focus, whether you're in the software-defined data center or you're in the cloud, is absolutely critical here. So.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for
Meg,
having me.
thank
Really
you
appreciate
for spending some time with us. This has been fantastic.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you
Well,
very
thank you.
much.
Thank you. And thank you to Dasher. You all have been incredible partners to us. We love doing business with you. And so thank you very much. Lori, thank you for... Lori was one of the nicest people to me when I first landed in this job. We met early on, and she was incredibly encouraging, and we really appreciate all the support you've given us. Thank you to you, Al.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So that takes us exactly to our lunch break. Lunch will be right outside. We'll be back in here at 1 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go. Good. Are you speaking today? Excellent. Excellent. So I just gave him like a little flavor. Hey. Oh, good. Hi.
Good.